Yo, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a special one here. This is 10 WWE wrestlers who you would not believe had enormous heat backstage. And when I think of wrestlers who had heat backstage, automatically you think of guys like The Miz, Enzo Amore. I'm sure there's others that right now, like I'm sure John Cena probably had heat backstage. If we're only talking WWE, not like WWF wise, I'm guessing, well, I don't like maybe Shawn Michaels, because I know Shawn Michaels wasn't very liked. I don't know. We will see. I'm sure there's going to be names on here that, like I said, we will not believe. I'm sure there's probably going to be some that we're like, oh yeah, definitely knew that. Before we get into this video, please hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, so that way you guys can keep up with all of my wrestling videos. But without further ado, X family, let's go ahead and get right into the reaction.
Backstage heat in pro wrestling relates to when a wrestler has upset certain people backstage. This usually stems from the wrestler rubbing people the wrong way or doing something wrong that is against the ethical code of a pro wrestling locker room.
Enzo was
some stories
very well known to rub people the wrong way, and The Miz.
Some stories that are completely baffling and highlight how trivial and borderline insane the politics involved in pro wrestling can be.
Oh,
so with that being said, let's look at Seth 10 and wrestlers Dean, you wouldn't believe had backstage heat.
I will let you know, man. WrestleLamia, they have banger music. If you guys want to watch the full video without any pauses or without the breakdowns, go ahead and click the link that's below in the description, as well as go ahead and subscribe to WrestleLamia if you're not already. Their channel will also be linked in the description below. Just wanted to get that out there.
Number 10, Chris Jericho.
I could see that, yep.
In WWE in 1999,
Chris Jericho,
he somehow managed to rub most of the top talent the wrong way. Jericho was a major player for WWE, and WWE quite rightly saw dollar signs when it came to Y2J. Jericho's first instance of receiving backstage heat in the company was
great
the most
entertainer,
ridiculous thing imaginable. During a promo segment between Jericho, The Undertaker, and Big Show, Jericho would refer to the Dead Man's promo as boring, and the WWE locker room felt this was disrespectful. Speaking about the incident on Kurt Angle's podcast, the inaugural Undisputed Champion stated, "My second promo, I called Undertaker boring. I said, you're boring. And really, the worst thing is, we laugh about it till this day, he had just done this super long, ridiculously boring promo about taking Big Show to the desert to try and teach him how to be tough and feeding him scorpion
I remember that.
Water out of a puddle, and it just dragged on and on."
That was the Big Show was kind of like, he was under the Undertaker's wing. I believe him and the Big Show won the tag team titles and all that stuff too. It was a really weird time. I think that was right before, didn't the Big Show get sent back down to like OVW at some point, like some point following that whole incident?
I was supposed to cut him off and call him boring, but this night he really was boring. What was supposed to get heat, a lot of people were like, well, we can't argue with that, and I was simply too far dumb to realize it, and it ended up getting heat on me. Number 9, Seth Rollins. In modern WWE,
Seth Rollins
is considered to be one of the most respected stars in the entire company, but when Rollins made his main roster arrival in 2012, he obtained backstage heat rather quickly. The reason for Rollins' backstage heat was that after a match, he was seen using an ice pack, and this didn't sit well with WWE's top star, John Cena.
For using an ice pack? The heck? He was probably just like rehabbing his like joints. Like, there's probably tons of people that do, there's tons of pro athletes, for like actual like amateur Olympic wrestlers and stuff that go out and use like cryotherapy and all that stuff now. Works wonders on your body, and Cena's giving him crap for an ice pack?
It was then reported that Rollins and the other members of the Shield had a big target on their back, and the
no wonder Cena gets hated on, bro.
Had to try and win over the locker room. The reality here is that a wrestler using an ice pack following a match isn't remotely a bad thing.
That's when Ambrose did that, right?
Why shouldn't wrestlers try to heal up after a match? This was a case of Cena stretching his backstage power to the detriment of others. Number 8, Tyler Breeze.
Tyler Breeze
was going to make his main roster debut in 2015.
Or was that Corbin? It was something.
Breeze had been a top star in NXT, and fans were hoping that Breeze would be presented well on the main roster. Things started extremely well for Breeze, as he would defeat Dolph Ziggler at the Survivor Series pay-per-view.
Heck yeah.
And shortly after this huge pay-per-view victory, reports would surface stating that Breeze suddenly had backstage heat.
Dinger!
It was reported that Breeze had gathered this heat due to him asking to leave early after a SmackDown taping. It was said that Breeze had received permission to leave early, but even still, this was seen as unprofessional. Breeze was moved dramatically down the card, and before fans knew it, Breeze's main roster push would officially be over.
Hey, but he also got to team up with Fandango, right? And start the Fashion Police and all that, and that was incredible. Those guys were awesome. They like the Fashion Files was like must-see TV. Loved it. But no, I could see that, asking to leave early while you got a lot of like the veterans and stuff there. The guys that's been there for a while is still, hanging around and trying to help people out, and it's I could see. I know that's always been known as kind of disrespectful, so I can see that why he got heat.
Number 7, Matt Striker. During the ruthless aggression
I've heard
era,
that he
Matt
wasn't
Striker
very
had
well
attained
liked as a
astronomical
wrestler
heat backstage in WWE. The reason for this heat was a passing comment that Striker made relating to the Raw roster being better than the SmackDown roster. The SmackDown roster had names such as Chris Benoit and
I don't know about
JBL
that.
attached to it at this time, so naturally this didn't go down well.
I think at this time is when they also had I think Rey Mysterio during that time. Was this when Kurt Angle was there during that time too? Eddie Guerrero, like all them? Oh, bro.
This was a case of Striker simply hyping up his own brand, but the other wrestlers didn't see it that way, and when Striker appeared in a dark match for SmackDown, the backstage heat came to the surface.
I bet he got wrecked.
He was unceremoniously booted out of the SmackDown locker room. Number 6,
Hands
Melina
in the hallway.
and Michelle McCool.
Oh, this is a double,
Imagine
huh?
getting backstage heat for having a great match. Well, that was
What?
the case in 2009 when Melina and Michelle McCool blew the roof off the arena at the Night of Champions event.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Go out there and have a great match? Like, try to have the best match possible? What are you supposed to do? Go out there and just lay an egg? Like, what?
The match was outstanding, especially for a time in which women were barely featured, and they weren't encouraged to steal
Well,
the
imagine
show.
that, two actually really good
Unfortunately, the match
workers
was a
having a
little
good match.
too good, and it rubbed the locker room and WWE management the wrong way. McCool
That's
would
so
talk about the
backwards.
infamous match on her website, and McCool confirmed the initial reports regarding the backstage heat.
I like she has faith written on there. I never knew she had faith because her move was the faith
We got
breaker.
in trouble for our match at Night of Champions. We got in trouble for our match being too good for girls. So I don't care how much trouble I get in if that's what I'm getting in trouble for. It started where I drop kicked her on her split entrance to the mat. Crazy, crazy bump, which she was always game for.
Heck
The
yeah.
crazier the better. We always worked well with each other, always wanted to come up with something different, some new way to come out of her moves, get into one of my moves, something you don't always see the girls do. No.
That sounds like it was a Vince and Kevin Dunn and all those people kind of had problems with that, right? Because during that time, the divas were supposed to be there for looking good and just kind of being filler in a lot of the ways. Also trying to attract more male audience members instead of showing up like your male counterparts. I don't understand why going out and having a match as well as looking as like beautiful as those two did. I don't understand how that's a bad thing, because now they're drawing in eyes from a different audience, probably more like female audience, and they're drawing in the eyes from the guys as well, just for having a banger match and it, the bonus of looking good on top of it. I mean, I don't get how that's an L at all.
Number 5, The Miz.
Yeah, this is notorious.
It's well documented just how much backstage heat The Miz had early on in his WWE
had
career.
to change in the hallways
The Miz
and
upset
stuff.
virtually the entire SmackDown roster, so much so that he was kicked out of the locker room.
I think specifically Benoit.
Even when Miz was WWE champion in 2011, the backstage heat continued, and this was mainly out of jealousy of Miz main eventing WrestleMania 27
Pretty sure it's
against
mainly
John
Benoit.
Cena. Former WWE agent Arn Anderson shed some light on Miz having backstage heat on his podcast, and this is what he had to say. There was a lot of talent at that WrestleMania that were pissed that Miz was in that spot. During that period, there was a lot of animosity around, and a lot of people that were trying to get over and get in position. When Miz was wrestling Cena, I just know that there were a lot of guys that felt that they've been in that spot and should have been in that spot. If you didn't want to be in that spot, something's wrong with you. I remember there was some tension here or there.
I mean,
Number 4,
it's wrestling
Booker
egos.
T. When Booker T arrived in WWE back in 2001,
Booker T
he
had
brought with
heat?
him his love for video games. Whilst in modern WWE, wrestlers playing video games backstage
Bruh.
is the norm, back in 2001, it was unprecedented.
We all know how Undertaker feels about that stuff, right? Like, Undertaker, like, I'm sure he probably tried to give Booker T an earful for, you know, being back there and playing those games instead of, you know, I remember when men were men and, you know, we had knives and guns in our in our luggage, you know what I'm saying? Like, nah, dude. He was ahead of his time then.
According to Booker, as well as reports, Booker legitimately received backstage heat for playing video games, and shortly after Booker began to play games backstage, an outright ban was issued.
Wow.
Speaking about this on his podcast, the
That's
multi-time world
stupid.
champion revealed, I got to WWE. I got my whole little portable system with me, right?
Yep.
So I brought it with me, and I'm in the locker room. I got it all set up for some Madden football.
He just wants to play some
Madden. The boys over there are
Madden.
going to be kind of like they were in WCW. So I'm setting it up. I got my team all set up, and D'Lo Brown comes up and he goes, "Man, you playing some Madden?" I go, "Yeah, you want to play?" He goes, "Yeah, man, I'll play around with you." So we sit down and we commence the round, and I'm kicking his ass.
Of course, D'Lo Brown steps in, or he probably came into the locker room like, "What's up? You playing some Madden?" Like his little walk, bro.
You know,
like,
Michael Hayes
bruh.
walks by and he goes, "You guys playing video games, huh?" And I go, yeah, we're just playing some Madden. And he goes, "Okay." And he walks off, and D'Lo looks at me, and you know, D'Lo's a light-skinned brother, but he turned white, and he goes, "Man, I gotta go." I was like,
He
"Man,
knew
the
what
hell
was
just
up.
happened?" From that point on, a note went out, no more video games. No one can play video games. I'm like, these guys are crazy here, man.
He got heat for playing video games. Imagine like Xavier Woods and stuff. Like how much heat he would have gotten during that time.
Number 3, Muhammad Hassan. The wrestling industry wasn't kind to
I
Muhammad
think
Hassan,
I remember
and for
this.
the most part, he did nothing to warrant the treatment he received with
Is this the
WWE.
Eddie Guerrero thing?
Hassan had backstage heat from the day he arrived on the main roster, as he was reportedly prone to question things when it came to booking and the presentation of his character.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
It was also reported that Hassan asked Eddie Guerrero if he could stop using the camel clutch, as he was using it as his finishing move. It was believed that Hassan was urged to do this by several wrestlers, and it was met with a less than enthusiastic response from Guerrero. Every single thing that Hassan was doing was resulting in backstage heat, and it was evident that the locker room was having a laugh at Hassan's expense. It was.
I don't know if they're gonna say it yet, but if you guys did not know, Eddie Guerrero's, I believe, father Gory, invented the camel clutch. So imagine going up to a man that, you know, father invented the move that you are using and asking that the son of that inventor, can you stop using that move because it's my move, bruh, that would not go over well.
It's even reported that one time Hassan paid for everybody's drinks in a bar, and the roster poured the drinks on the floor as a protest and to show Hassan that he was truly disliked within the locker room.
I mean, that's kind of
Number
shitty.
2, Matt Riddle.
Matt Riddle rubs
2022,
everyone the
it was
wrong way.
reported that Matt Riddle had backstage heat
The
due
Goldberg
to a comment he
stuff.
made about Roman Reigns during an interview. In this interview, Riddle would jokingly comment that he could beat Reigns in a real fight, and whilst no doubt a weird comment to make, it was ultimately harmless, but the locker room didn't
You're
see
a
it that way.
wrestler, bro. You're a wrestler. It's not there about like who would win in a real fight. Like, no one cares. Go out there and do your job at this
Riddle
point.
would be in an uncomfortable position in the locker room, as he was reportedly rather disliked at the time. It didn't help that names such as Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, and even Seth Rollins already disliked him, and now there were even more names in the anti-Riddle section of the locker room.
For a bad career.
Number 1, Edge and Christian.
Edge and Christian, they had
Back in the
heat.
Attitude Era, it was common practice for wrestlers to receive backstage heat for nonsensical things. This was the case when Edge and Christian received backstage heat in 2000, and the backstage heat was so bad that the talented duo had to visit the notorious Wrestler's Court.
Wrestler's Court.
The story goes that Edge and Christian had built up a genuine friendship with head writer for WWE, Brian Gewirtz. The trio had very similar personalities.
Brian Gewirtz, for those of you who do not know, was one of the writers during the Attitude Era. He's written books and stuff like that. Really amazing writer. He did a lot of the writing, the storyline writing for some of the top wrestlers of the Attitude Era stuff. People like Stone Cold, The Rock, Triple H, all those. He was the main writers for those guys. So all those, like, you know, the great storylines you remember from like the Attitude Era and on like that, it's most likely written by Brian Gewirtz.
And had the same interests outside the crazy world of pro wrestling. Apparently, Hardcore Holly saw Edge and Christian gifting Gewurtz an action figure of the Flash, and Holly, as well as other wrestlers, believed that the duo were bribing WWE's head writer.
Wow.
Edge and Christian would end up in wrestler's court, and according to Bubba Ray Dudley, the duo managed to reduce the amount of backstage heat
of course
by
they did.
into the accusations of politicking. According to Bubba, the duo brought along their own book titled How to Kiss Ass, Politic, and Influence People, and they even purchased the judge of wrestler's court, The Undertaker, a bottle of Jack Daniels.
They worked the system. They knew what was up. They said, yo, we ain't going down like this. We know what you guys like, and we're going to take every advantage that we can to butter you all up so we don't take the harsh punishment. That's, hey, you got to do what you got to do. You know what I mean? I don't blame them. Yeah, there was some people on there that, you know, you knew was going to be on this list, right? I'm surprised Enzo isn't on this list, to be honest with you. Enzo Amore had a lot of heat backstage. I mean, I've met Enzo. Was super nice when I met him. Seemed like a fantastic dude. Like I didn't know that Seth Rollins really had heat like that. And Booker T. I didn't really know Booker T had heat. I know that he had problems with like Batista. Him and Batista like fist fought, but I don't really take that as like heat, like actual locker room heat, right? I just think that as a dispute. But regardless, this has been another reaction. If you like the reaction, go ahead, hit that like for me. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed, so you guys can stay up to date with every single wrestling reaction when I drop it. And if you could, go ahead, turn that notification bell on so you guys can get every single video the second that I drop it. Alright, X family, I love y'all. Have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you all in the next reaction. Later.